Much, Professor Annalisa Sacca, for your kind introduction, and thank you also to Dr. Riccardo Colasanti, because his presentation was, I think, fascinating. What I'm going to say is going to be very much narrow. It's a simple analysis of Naim's book. So the question is to highlight the complexity of the problem that Moises Naim is analyzing in his book, The Decline of Power. I would like just to underline how the structure of this complexity. So this is what I want to say. Maybe single transparency will be enough. We try to show how to explain this decline of power by taking into account the relationship between two different concepts: influence and power. Sometimes they are taken synonyms, but I would like to make a distinction here. And in such a way we can we can consider the effects of the appearance of these new actors, holders of power, in several scales of space and time. So, as you can see, I'm an intruder, I'm a mathematician, and I've tried to make a model, mathematical model, to clarify a little bit this process under the viewpoint of complexity. So the outline of the presentation will be this one, 4 points. The first one, just to recall, nothing new, but definition or working definition of power, especially working definition. Remember, we're especially interested in the relationship between power and influence. So, just to give some examples. First, we have to recognize that power is a very difficult concept. It's not easy to understand the meaning of power, or even what do we mean by power in the different areas of social sciences, including psychology, politics, economy, even religion, moral power. It's not easy. It's not easy to grasp the whole meaning of power. Of course, it's even more difficult to create, to make a measurement, to quantify power. But anyway, we're going to try to do something in this direction. Just a few examples. Some scholars like Alvin Toffler describe power in three dimensions: violence, wealth, and knowledge. Well, another scholar, Keith Dowling, he distinguished two kinds of powers: the outcome, that's the power to do something, and social power, meaning mainly the power of other people. Naim himself is talking about hard and soft power. This is not his something that he himself created, but it's used by many authors, talking about distinguishing between hard and soft power. But we have to consider also who is the holder of this power. We're talking about individuals, groups, parties, nations, companies, or whatever. So, what is power? The first definition is not very complicated. Power is the ability to act, or the ability to get someone to do something you want done. That means social and personal power. Second, in this two definitions. We have the key for our analysis, that is the distinction between power and influence. We say that power is something potential, it's the ability to direct or prevent the current or future actions of other groups. But influence is the ability to affect the behaviors of others in a particular direction. So, power, finally, is the potential or capacity to influence. We can say that influence is power in action. Well, just to remind some of the main points of Moises Naim's book. According to Naim, there are 4 channels, 4 forms of operating regarding to power. He calls muscle, code, pitch, and reward. Well, muscle means power by coercion, like in the case of dictatorships, no? But there are many other cases where this channel is used. For instance, when sometimes some people exercise some psychological power, it can also be by coercion. There's also moral obligation. There's also persuasion, like when we try to convince someone that this product is necessary for this life, or maybe by reward. Reward doesn't mean giving money, but in exchange of favors. Okay? So, more or less, Naim is following this description. It's more or less similar to the description used by other scholars, but I think it's quite clear and quite complete. Muscle, code, pitch, and reward. Well, with these 3 channels for the exercise of power, as Annalisa mentioned very clearly, and according to Naim, there are 3 revolutions called mobility and mentality. The idea of Naim is he's holding that power creates barriers for self-protection. But these 3 revolutions tend to erode, to destroy these barriers. This is the dynamics according to him. So more means a really new situation. The world population, the number of actors in power. Mobility means not only migration, but movements of population, changes in the social scale. And finally, mentality. Mentality is something really complicated because it's not homogeneous. But in any case, we can highlight some universal or general changes in mentality in the world. For instance, individualism, or as Professor Colasanti said, mistrust, not only in spiritual values, but in politics, future. I'll give you a little example. In Spain, now there's a generation of young people called Generation Ni, Generación Ni, meaning neither work nor study. There are many. They are not poor people. Many of them are wealthy people. I know many of them. Just in front of our house, there's a group of them who gather every weekend, a long weekend, from Thursday to Sunday. No? They do nothing. Nothing. I've been talking to them, they have no hope, they don't see future, they don't have beliefs, they don't love other people, yet they just gather, drink, and I don't know if they talk, but they roar. It's really sad. It's really sad. So this is not accidental. This is not some cases. It's almost a whole generation, and this is a time bomb. this will have many consequences, maybe not tomorrow, but it's a potential and real danger, apart from being very sad. Okay, these three revolutions, in my opinion, is a very clever analysis of the situation of the world today. This is a table in Naim's book where he describes in a very synthetic way the role of the three revolutions, as he calls more mobility and mentality, and how these revolutions attack, erode the barriers built by these four channels of power. That's interesting. I think it can be expressed in very different ways, but this is very, very meaningful. Okay, so let's think a little bit about that, about these four channels and these three revolutions. Let's give an interpretation and a quantitative model. As I was saying, that I think that the analysis of Naim is very opportune, but of course there's, as Professor Colasanti mentioned, that the important thing is that we have to think how to manage this reality, these revolutions, how to find a way, how to work with this reality, with these changes in mentality, mobility, and number of people or actors in power.